Okay, so welcome everyone to another episode of Profit Max Podcast. And today we're going to talk to icon in the leadership training business. I think he needs no introduction. You guys know him already. I think I'm sure the name Leaderonomics is associated with him. Very well known. Very pleased to have Roshan Thiran with us today. And I'll be introducing him in a little while. But first of all, just a bit of background for people who may be watching this for the first time. My name is Peter Lam. I'm the author of this book called Profit Makes Your Business. And this podcast channel is basically designed to bring insights from business leaders to help you guys, in business to gain more information, more knowledge, and to hear from different angles, because sometimes that really makes a big difference. So we're here to add value to you, and hope this episode, like all the other episodes, will do the same. So without much further ado, let me introduce Roshan. I've known Roshan for many years, and many of us have followed him, from the days when every Saturday we look forward to his pull-out section in the Star, the Leaderonomics pull-out, So some people start with that on Saturdays, but now he's gone online, I think, totally. And I know Roshan used to come from a corporate background. I believe he was many years with GE. So we'll let him tell us about his story. So over to you, Roshan. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey to Leaderonomics, how it
Sure,
has been, and how you got here in the first place.
sure. Thanks for the invite. One of the things I think for myself is that, one big thing early on in my life was about trying to find meaning and trying to find purpose in what I was doing. And when I started early on, right after or during university, I got an internship with a company called General Electric in the U.S. And when I was studying there, and I interned, and my boss actually, who's now one of our I guess advisors in Leaderonomics today. My first boss, a guy called Mike Petroselli, he kind of really during my internship beat me up and pushed me really really hard. And then as I finished my internship, he said, "Look, don't waste time with school. Come work for me." And skip your last year of school. I said, "Look, I'm on scholarship. Why should I do that?" And we negotiated, and I ended up working for him for a year, doing school part time, doing the night. We had night classes and stuff like that. I started at the age of 20 working for GE in the investment space. We were part of GE Investments, a small setup
Wow.
to invest GE's pension trust. So I was a finance guy, and then I ended up doing many roles in GE, about nine to 10 roles in GE, and most of my roles were in finance. Starting out in the US in Connecticut, I moved for a little while to NBC, which is GE's at that time. GE owned NBC Universal, which is a
Oh,
TV
okay.
production. Yeah, so I was the news and sports finance guy.
Huh.
So I ran it's called I wouldn't say ran, but I was the finance guy for the news and sports division of NBC for a while.
Wow.
Then I went to Europe for a while with G Capital. I was an acquisition integration guy. So whenever we bought a bank, my job was to go and integrate it. So I'd spend 90 days in, say, Czech Republic. We bought a bank, Agrobank. So I'd spend 90 days there. We bought multi-service in Denmark. Spent 3 months in Italy, and so on. So I spent a good, nice couple of years in Europe doing integration, and then I came back to the US. At the time it was 1998. And I ended up actually, I think it's because I'm Indian. So you see, it's funny thing is, I am a finance guy, and somehow one of the things I did in the integration role got the eye of Jack Welch, which was this 90-day plan. And
Huh.
so I was part of this best practice team in GE, and our goal was to make sure everybody in the GE world knew about this 90-day integration plan. But that was the year 1998, where people were worried the world was going to end in the year 2000. If you remember the Y2K buzz,
Y2K bug, yeah.
and for whatever reason, I think it's just because I'm Indian. I was asked to be a Y2K person and to fix our Y2K problem, which I got. And when in those days, right? I think now people will fight back with their boss and say, no, I don't want to do this work. But in those days, when your boss says jump, you just say how high, sir, and you just jump, right? So when they say do Y2K, and I was like, yes, sir, and that was it. So I got into technology, and it was fascinating because I got to see a lot of legacy systems, right? Because GE is a very manufacturing company, and going around from Brazil, I spent some time in Brazil with our South American business. We went to parts of Italy and Barcelona, and understanding our power business there, and some of the legacy systems, because we had really, think about this, big manufacturing companies, they would invest in huge legacy systems, and the only reason to change, everything works, right, was Y2K, right? And so instead of fixing the code, one thing that we and our team decided is that we didn't want to fix the code, let's just upgrade to new systems. So I got involved with Oracle, because Oracle is trying to get into the whole MRO space, right? The maintenance, repair, operations software space, and compete with SAP. So I worked that, and somewhere along the line I got invited to board meetings, and one of the sessions I met the head of aircraft engines, and I said, look, you've an entity in Malaysia, because they just bought a company from Malaysian Airlines in Subang. And I said, I'm Malaysian, send me back, let me run the place. And they finally agreed, and it was like a nightmare when I came back, because it was a very, very badly run operations. And that's where really my journey began, because I got an opportunity to turn around that entire business. And till today, right, it's still the best in the world. It is the only Malaysian business, I think, for the last 20 years that's the best in the world. And that turnaround actually,
Aero or something?
not Aerod, but it was called Aero 97 before.
Okay.
Aerod is the military engines. Ours is the commercial engines.
Okay.
But today, this company, when I came in, it was $30 million US dollar, losing about 60 million US, right? So that was a shock. We grew it in 2 years to about maybe 150, 200 million US. So about close to $1 billion, but not yet the ringgit. Today it's a $1 billion plus US dollar business, right?
Wow.
It's
Still
still,
a G.
it's the biggest, the best. Today, Ryanair, Southwest Airlines, all the best airlines in the world, they send their aircraft, or they send their engines, right, to Subang, or they send it to KLIA, and then they transfer it to Subang to be overhauled, right? So
Wow.
many airlines in the world do that today, right? And I had the opportunity of turning that around, and part of that journey was that I suddenly got the attention, not just of the GE world, but really Malaysia, right? Khazanah at that time in 2003, we had a new prime minister, and he was very adamant about fixing the GLC. I think one of our better prime ministers, right? When you look at history of all our horrendous prime ministers, Badawi, they call him the sleeping guy. But honestly, a lot of things that he did was really good, right? He opened up the country. And one of the things he did was this GLC transformation, GLC transformation government companies transformation program, where he said he wanted to clean up the GLCs. And he started the Orange Book, Yellow Book, and if you read those books, a lot of that is predicated on the work that we did at GE Engine Services, which is that transformation blueprint. And so I started getting involved in helping on a pro bono basis different Khazanah owned or GLCs. Got to know people like Dato Said. At that time he was in Post Malaysia, and a number of folks, because they all say, hey, how did you do it? Come help us and talk us through the process of taking a local Malaysian company, because it was really a company that we bought from Malaysian Airlines. So it was very local, and really turning it around to not just being best in Asia, but really being best in the world. So that's really where it started, and that's where I started getting fascinated by change, by transformation, by people transformation. Because I think what was more interesting is not that the company became number one, but the same people that 2 years ago were useless. Because everyone told me that the problem in your company is people, right? If you get rid of the people and get better people, then your company will be better. But we didn't do that. No, we didn't get rid of people. We took the same people, but we made the company better. And in the process, our people became best in the world. So the same people.
How did you do that? So you're saying it's the same people.
It's the same people. And today, if you look at
them.
today, Suresh is the head, right? We had Nashad, we had all these local guys, right, who were the heads before. But Suresh was my billing guy, right, when I was there, right, doing billing and customer service and so on. Today he's the MD of the shop, and they're doing $1 billion plus, right? So if you think about it, I think the question is more of, in most organizations, I feel, in Malaysian organizations, they have 3 or 4 things. These are the 3 or 4 things that we focused on. I think the first one is your business model. You got to get the right business model, and we were flawed, right, in many ways. And so we pivoted and we started to look at the right business model. But once we get that right, the next piece is alignment. That means everybody in the business must do it in an aligned manner. Means I must have the same vision, I must have the same understanding of where we are, I must have the same game plan, and I must be executing all in the same direction.
Getting
So that's the
everybody on the
second
same
piece,
page, huh?
and that's the hardest part of leadership.
Yeah, yeah.
It is the hardest part of leadership. Then I think the third piece is about structure. What I learned was that if you want behavior to change, you can tell people to behave differently, nothing will happen, even if you're the CEO. But if you change structures, if I change compensation, if I change the way people report to who, if I change how people, which behavior is rewarded, which behavior is punished, if I change systems, if I start to change that, then I will change behavior. And that's what we did. We started to change the systems and structures in the company. And the last part is about what we call culture. And culture to me is beliefs. Because inside our company, we had a lot of beliefs that Malaysians are lousy. Yeah, we are Malaysians, come on. What do you mean? Because my first thing I came here and said, look guys, the best in the world can turn around engine in 40 days. You guys are doing it at 500 days on average. What the hell, man? But you don't understand. It's different here. We're compliant. You are not from. You are in banking space. What you all know
culture.
But they push back. It's like you're from banking space. What you all know about compliance? I'm like, hey, banking is so highly compliant. Okay, maybe not as compliant as aviation, but the thing is, I came from an area of not being an expert, right? I'm not an aviation expert. They were, and if you listen to their comments, they all sound very reasonable. But I was a bit unreasonable, and I realized that I can say I want change, nothing's going to happen. So you change the structure. So then I said, okay, fine. We organized something very simple. I said I got no money because we were losing money, right? So I said, look guys, I go division by division. I said, look, if you can just give me a 10% better performance, right? We celebrate your success by having a satay party for everybody. And that's what we did, right? We just little satay parties. So when one division did slightly better, so let's say their turnaround is 10 days for this division. It means, let's say I'm the guys that strip out all the piece parts and take the engine and make it into piece parts. And I take 10 days to do it. If they do it in 7 days, I'll like, wow, we have a little party, and I'll honor them. I'll say, hey, buy 1,000 sticks of, we had about 400 guys there, for maybe 1,500 sticks of satay. And which not that expensive. Satay I can satay not so expensive right? So I buy 1,000 sticks of satay or 2,000 sticks of satay, put it out there and say, guys, today, because these guys have managed to move from 10 days to 7 days, we're having this party in honor of them. And then the other guys will say, hey, why you never honor us? I also want to be honored. Okay, do better. And so then we started, and this is what we call rituals, right? You create rituals of productivity. And soon everybody's fighting to be better because they want to be the honored guests. Because the satay party will bring the whole team, the 5 of them or 8 of them, and honor them and clap and say, look at what they did, and let them make speeches, and they all feel good, for a few $100 of satay, right? And so to me, I can afford satay, and it's very visible, and it's not really paying them. I'm not really paying them. Everybody benefits from the free satay. But they get honored, right? So things like that, right? And these are what we call little tweaks in the organization. And I realized the more you start to tweak it, and then guess what? When we started getting to 100 days, people were like, hey, we 100 days, And I said the best in Asia, they do it 60 to 80 days. Surely we can be the best in Asia, right? And then boom, we are 60 days, we are 55 days. Hey, come on, surely we're better than IHI, right? They do it in 40 days. Come on, we can do this better.
Wow.
We hit 35 days, right?
Wow.
And we consistently had no defects, right? And Japan Airlines, one of the most, and this was during my time there, right? Japan Airlines came and called me. I remember Nagatoki-san, the head of engineering from Japan Airlines. He's like, Roshan, I want to sign a 10-year long-term deal with you. And I'm like, 10 years exclusive long-term Japan Airlines, one of the most safest airlines in the world. And I was like, wow, we've done it, right? At that time, we hadn't done 35 days. We were still at about 60, 70 days. But he said, look, I know you're going to be the best in the world. But you give me pricing based on 60 days so that I get cheaper pricing. But when you get to 35, I benefit, right? These are the smart Japanese guys that figured it out, right? And true enough, within 6 months, we were there. We were hitting 40 days consistently, 35 days, and so on and so forth, right?
It's quite an amazing story, quite an amazing journey.
Yeah. And I learned a lot. I mean, it was a very stressful time. Which then led me to my second part of my life, which is I quit GE. I said I don't want to do this anymore. I'm too tired.
I was going to ask, what happened after that?
Yeah, so I actually at that point in time I said it's too tiring. I was in China, because you remember when you're running a business, you're always doing sales, right? Ultimately, right? So I was in China. I remember this. I was in Asiana in Korea with Asiana Airlines. 2 days later, I flew to Japan Airlines, met up with the Japan team. And then I flew to Guangzhou to meet with China Southern Airlines, and I was having dinner, I think, with Madam Wei, the head of engineering for China Southern Airlines. It's like big bowl of soup in front of me. I just collapsed next to the bowl and just fell flat. And she panicked, She's like, what's happening? And I realized it's a good sales tactic, because immediately she signed the contract and said, go home, go home. And I got 10 engines, right? But on my way home, I said, I'm too tired. I have done it. I mean, we've turned around the business. I've done it. So I quit. I told GE, I went to the HR guy, I said I quit. And he said, no, you're not quitting, you're taking a sabbatical. And that's really actually set me up, because one of the things he asked me was very interesting. And this is a HR guy of GE. He said, look, you're a good guy. You just need a break. You need to do something completely different. Go fix something that you are angry about or passionate about. And he asked me, what do you think is the worst thing in GE? Then I said, what do you mean by worst thing? Like what worst function or worst operation or worst business? Then I said, worst function is yours lah, HR. It's a horrendous function, and HR people are hopeless. They're always blockers, and everything cannot do, right? Really useless one. Then he looked at me, and I'm like, obviously I was at a state of mind, I really didn't care about what I was saying, right? But he took it with a grain of salt, and he laughed, and he said, I think you're right. And he said, come help me fix it. And he said, look, I can't put you in a HR role, but why don't I put you, because our new CEO, Jeff Immelt, at that time there was a CEO transition where Jack Welch had left, and I met up with Jeff Immelt, and I met up with a bunch of the HR guys, and he said, look, I think it's a good idea to have you as an ops guy go and run our learning, and Jeff gave me a target to revamp the curriculum. So I got an opportunity at that time to revamp GE's curriculum. So for the last 15 years or so, we were using Jack Welch, his four E's and 1P. We had all the leadership curriculum based on workout and change acceleration. And the new CEO said, look, change it, and let's have a new leadership curriculum. And that's how I got into the whole learning space, right? I ended up spending 2 years revamping GE's curriculum. And then I ended up being head of HR for Asia for GE. And then at that point in time, Johnson & Johnson came to me. This is about 4 or 5 years later. They came to me and said, look, we like what you did at GE. Can you come to J&J and help us revamp our talent programs? So I then ended up on a global role, helping them in the global talent organization in Johnson & Johnson. And then at that point in time is where I started Leaderonomics. Is where I said, look, I'm tired of traveling all over the world. In GE, I worked in Shanghai, in Japan, Singapore. I was all over, right? At that point, I said, look, I enjoyed my time in Malaysia the most. I want to stay back. I want to come back here, and that's where I set up Leaderonomics. I finished my J&J project, and we set up Leaderonomics already. Yep.
What year was that, Roshan?
We set up Leaderonomics in 2007. I joined Leaderonomics in 2009.
Okay.
So in 2007, we did it more as an NGO. So Leaderonomics actually was not started as a business. It was started as so Hui Ming and I, many years ago when I was in GE, when I was head of HR of Asia, I used to run the GE volunteers, or what we call Alfan, the volunteer program. And this is where we get our and one of the experiments that I started to do is that I started to take young Malaysians and protect them for a couple of years. Actually hire them into GE, keep them in a separate like a house that got project. They end up doing projects for me lah, right? And maybe a couple of guys on my team. After 2 years of experiencing GE, I then let them go into the business. And what we found was so interesting that these are people from UPM, USM, the local universities like UITM and so on. And I realized that initially the first 2 years was a struggle. Language was an issue. Confidence was an issue. Not so much skill, but they had the skill, but just not the confidence to execute. So the execution was very poor. But when you protect them and you teach them and you whack them and you push them and you force them into very uncomfortable experiences, after 2-3 years, today if you look at GE, right, so many CFOs in GE today are from that group, right? Of people that we experimented. And I realized, hey, maybe if I can take a Malaysian, and just like manufacturing, right, you can take a talent and process them, and then they come out into a gem, right? So it's not so much the university education, it's the organizational experience. It's a process, right? If you can bake that process in right, you can actually create gems of people. And that's kind of how we started Leaderonomics. We said, look, let's start with the young kids who are 12, 13 years old. Let's spend time with them. And so Leaderonomics, I hired a guy, Young Jun, and I said, you just go find poor kids all over the world, all over Malaysia lah, focus, and get them into a program, a camp, and I'll bring my G managers to volunteer. And then we will continue to build that relationship with the G manager and that person, those kids.
You're talking about 12, 13-year-old, very young
12, 13-year-olds,
teenagers.
teenagers.
Young teens.
And you'll be surprised. So we started in 2003, this GE volunteer, right? We ran camps.
Ah,
But by 2007, I say this is working, it is absolutely working because we saw a lot of these kids from Miri, from Lawas, from KK, from, most of them were East Malaysians. We saw that the confidence was higher. They had experience working with, whether it's Mat Sallehs and so on and so forth. And they went into universities and they've succeeded, and some of them even got jobs in big organizations, right?
ah,
And I said, this works, and I said, why don't we do this? So I put some money of my own and I said, let's do this for fun. Every year we take a batch of 30 kids, 40 kids, truly funded by myself and volunteers, right? And so that's 2007. We started our camps. 2008, but 2008, I started writing articles for the Star, and the CEO of Star, that time Dato Steven said, hey, I want you to come work for me in the Star. I said, go and die lah. I'm never going to work for you all. And I was J&J, right? Why should I work for you guys? Then finally he said, look, I'll put some investment in to your NGO. You work for the NGO. You work for Leaderonomics, the NGO, and do whatever you want lah. I don't care. Just help us in Star when I need you. So I'm like, hey, that sounds interesting, right? Because I get to do what I think I'm very passionate about, which is helping Malaysians, right? And I took up the offer. I mean, small investment they made. Unfortunately for me, in 2008 there was an election in MCA. Star is owned by a political party. And this MCA guys decided to remove him as CEO and put somebody else in, and there ended our. Although what they had done is they had put some money in and they had transferred it and made us into a company. So we are Leaderonomics Sdn Bhd, 51% owned now by them, and suddenly a new CEO comes in. Whoa, who's funding you? What's happening? And I suddenly realized I've left my job. I come in here full time, and now I've got no funding, right? Because that whole thing just died, right? And that's where I said, hey, I got to do something lah. So that's how we started the training business. I said, okay lah, I go and teach her. So I am the only one who taught, and 8 of us, the rest of them continue to do the NGO work or the community work, right?
okay.
And that's our business model. I teach, everybody else get paid salary. I also get paid salary. So I teach to get X amount, maybe 100,000 a month, and then I'll take a bit, somebody else take, and we cover our costs, right? And interestingly, at that point in time, the stuff I talked about, all the GLC transformations were happening. 2008, 2009, post-Malaysia transformation, Gas Malaysia, Malakoff, DRB. I mean, there were so many transformation projects, in across the UMW. And whenever I remember this because Tan Sri Azman, who was the time the head of Khazanah, post Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, Dato' Sai at the time wrote to him and said, we're going to use McKinsey on this transformation project. It's going to cost us don't know how many million to do it. And he wrote back, what for? Go talk to Roshan. I'm sure he'll do it for cheaper. Right? And then I remember my first conversation with him was like, who are you? Why should I talk to you? Azman asked me to talk to you. Who are you? What the hell? I don't want to use you. I want to use McKinsey. And I'm like, okay, don't need to use me, but here's what I can do for you. And then I talked to him, blah, blah, blah. And, we became good friends. And 6 months later, Post Malaysia is profitable. We did something very simple in Post Malaysia. We just doubled the price of the stamp from 30 cents to 60 cents, right? So that's a business model tweak, right? Which I told you, right? We start with the business model, then go to alignment, then go to culture or structure. So one simple tweak, double the price of stamps, be profitable, right? And I think the other side and I have been good friends since. He went to Proton as chairman. He's like, hey, you gotta help me with Proton, boom, And a couple of years ago, before the sale, we were helping them. So suddenly the work just expanded because so many people came, and I realized that I had to build a team to do the delivery, and that's where Leaderonomics, the corporate business, started. We hired the Eric Laos, the Caroline Ongs, the Kyril and Vinesh and all these guys, right? Today many of them are big leaders in other companies, but we brought all these people in, and they ultimately ran the corporate business, while I continued to run the community. And then later we pivoted. I mean, about 2013, 2014. I don't know, many people don't know this, but I actually ended up going back to the Star to manage it for a while, right after the elections of 2013, where they didn't have a CEO, so I stepped in for a while. But I didn't last for long, because after I think it was 3 or 4 months, I quit. It was too.
They asked you to become an MCA member.
I think transformation works when there is total alignment. So we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's very interesting background, no, Roshan?
Sure.
And quite a lot of lessons there, the way your mind thinks and the mindset that you have and your 3-step model that you have. Want to ask you, coming from a corporate background where you gain a lot of management skills and the way you look at things very different, very corporate. Has that helped you in your entrepreneur journey, or conversely, has it been a bit of what do you call a bit of an impedance and probably some things you need to unlearn when you go into being an entrepreneur? Which is it, or is it a
Yeah,
combination of both, or?
yeah, I think the interesting thing is that I think it helps and it also detracts, right? I mean, it's both, right? To some extent. So if you think about it, right, I think one of the things that people don't give a lot of, when they start a business, a lot of people don't realize this, right? It's not so much just the knowledge that you have or the product understanding, or it's also the relationships that you have, right? So if you think about when I was in GE, I always volunteered for stuff, right? So I volunteered, not that I was paid by Khazanah and all these guys. I volunteered to help in the GLC transformation projects. I helped out, and in the process, I got to meet Idris Jala. I got to meet all these guys, Amar Padas. I got to meet pretty much all the big CEOs of all the GLCs that connected with me lah, and understood my story, and also were trying to learn from me, and in the process, when I started the business, on one side, that corporate side where the relationships, the networks, the ability to connect across boundaries, the ability to go to a CEO and say, look, I understand, because I worked in a multinational, and I understand what it means to be a CEO of UMW, right? Because I understand what silos are, I understand what divisions are, and I've dealt with that. I was a HR guy across 15 units in GE, right? When I was running GE across Asia, so I understand where it works. I was also in the business. I was in the aviation business, so I understand the business perspective. Sitting in the business where the corporate guys and the guys from HQ are shouting shit on you. I'm like, go to hell, I'm doing my work, don't disturb us. Whereas at the same time, I was in HQ, right? I'm the HR guy at HQ level, and I need all these things. So having that perspective helped when you went into companies and say, look, I think when I do instructional design, when I understand your business model and your business strategy and develop training programs that align, I understand that. So that's helpful. And on the flip side, I think where the learning has been huge is that you don't realize, right? Because when you have a big team, right, everyone's so specialized in their different areas. You don't realize how complex business can be and how all-rounder you need to be, right? You need to be understanding, you need to be really good in sales, but you need to be really good in finance. You need to be really good in development. I mean, we pivoted to, to some extent, we have a new division, Leaderonomics Digital, that I think, it's just my board member, Paul, was just telling us, like, you guys he's better than many of the US companies, right? Why aren't you out there, right? But to make that change, you got to be so agile, you got to be so flexible, and you got to burn, right? Because in the past, right, in corporate, you learn that when you develop something new, you must succeed. Now, when you start new digital businesses, right, it's going to be failure, long time of failure. And you just have to tahan, and like, okay, just close your eyes and just burn millions and millions and millions and just get it. But ultimately, you get to a point, you're like, okay, this works. The product market fit works. The education is there. The awareness is there. There's a right fit. Customers want it. Boom, you got it. Nicole is working, right? But it takes many years. Now, in the corporate, we say, fail and fail fast, and this, when it fails, jump it. But I think when you're talking startups and innovation, it's a lot of time is you build the base, and then it doesn't work, then you take parts of it out and you replace it, but the base remains the same. But you're innovating in terms of driving the product features to be a product market fit. And I think that's the part where it's very a huge learning for me, right? Because I think I can be innovative in products, but that in aviation, it was like pricing. The innovation is in pricing. We price it in a certain way. It's not real product engineering, right? It's not really like you're chopping and shelving a product. I think in Leaderonomics, we really literally chop a product into half and say, I take half of this product, I take another half, I put it together. Hey, we got a new product here, right? We just created that, called the accelerator with a coach, right? And Peter, you should talk to our guys, because we got Nicole, which is a totally digital scalable, but we realized people want human touch, right? So we say, hey, just put a coach together with Nicole. Hey, you've got a coaching scalable coaching product, right?
Ah,
And we just developed that like a couple of weeks ago, right? And I look at the guy, I was like, oh, right? And that's but that takes a lot of crowd. You can't do that in big companies, you know. You know how many approvals? What do you mean you have to do? Oh, coaching is a different division. This different division. Oh, and you've got all that bureaucracy and red tape,
yeah.
and sometimes, you know, even Leaderonomics, we have that, right?
Mm,
Because we have our silos too. But it's a lot more easier to navigate, and we have to be faster, lah. But to me, those are the two big lessons, lah, I think.
mm, okay. So agility and speed of response. Um, what's the
Yeah.
thing that keeps you? You know, you're a very driven guy. You know, very high energy, very driven guy. What's the thing that keeps you going and keeps you motivated and all
Yeah,
this
I
kind of-
mean, I don't know about that lah, but when we set up Leaderonomics, our goal was very simple lah. We said we want to take one person and make them into a better leader. So if you look at our vision, right, which is growing people into leaders, that's the first part of the vision. The second part
Mm,
is building communities of love, and the third part is transforming the nation. So that's our vision
mm,
statement. Now, if you look
okay.
at our vision statement, it's taking one person and making them a better leader. Now, why do you make them a better leader? So that they can change the communities they serve and change it from fear-based, race-based, all the idiots-based stuff that we see today in our country into love-based, right? Which is you have an environment where people can be their best. There's no fear. There's a lot of
Mm,
oxytocin and serotonin and less cortisol that's being thrown out into the air, right? I mean, if you look at it in a chemical perspective, like that's what love does, right?
yes.
So that, and now if there are 10 communities that transform, 20 communities, 100 communities, 50 organizations, 100 organizations. If you can do that in a scalable manner, right? You don't need to go to the streets and march and dissolve parliament and all that. Automatically, the country will be transformed because you've got
Yes.
communities have high integrity, they have love, and
Yes. Yes.
practice justice, equality, and equity, and all these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
the goal
think.
was very simple, right? Is
Mm,
to take a person and make them a better leader, and
mm,
they will be the better leader will make the community better,
yeah.
and the community and many such communities will transform the nation. So
Mm,
that's the vision we hold on to, lah. So you ask
mm.
me what motivates me, and 2018 I was excited because we saw some change happen. Unfortunately, a lot
Short
of,
lived.
yeah, short-lived, and also it's not. I mean, there were a lot of old people in that administration, lah, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately, you still had the same old players with just a different face and a mask or whatever you want to call it, lah, right? And today they're back, lah, right? In this new government and so on. But the point is that if you really want to drive change, it has to be an inside-out perspective, right? You
Yeah.
got to transform the inside. And in
Yes.
2018, I think when the Minister of HR and a couple of others spoke to me, a couple of the ministers spoke to me, I said, look, I'm happy to support, and I think we try to, but at the inside out perspective, look at the organization and say, let's
Yes.
make the inside great. And if
Yes.
you make the inside great, the outside will shine. It's like an onion, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
the inside is great, you peel it, we see the top layer, but the most important is the core,
The
right?
core, yeah.
And so
And
that's
that's
the vision.
that's
Now
what
that
that's what our I don't know if you recall. No, we had a little chat about this some months ago. That's what our virtuous leadership program is all about, changing from the core.
Yeah,
And you were talking
absolutely.
about the Prime Minister in 2003. I remember one of his big projects was the Integrity Institute, which I think has
Yeah,
died or something now, no?
yeah, yeah,
But that's
yeah,
what we need, no? So
yeah.
anyway, that's
So
sidetracking.
it's
Back.
it's 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 what drives me, lah. So you ask me what
Mm,
motivates me, is like that's the vision. Although I was a bit disappointed, and maybe for a year or two, including COVID, right? I mean, COVID just wiped me out, right? March, mid March, right? Suddenly you got zero revenue, right? For a month and a half, 2 months. My payroll is huge, right? At that time I had about 80, 90 people on payroll, right? I mean, if we weren't a small company at that point in time, right? With huge investments. I mean, I've been burning millions and millions every year on the digital business, right? And our digital business was not ready because we're still building. We were building Nico, Happily, Budaya, Mental Cloud. We're building all this stuff, right? And when you build tech, is years and years and millions, right? But it happened, and it forced us to go faster. We still think we have probably the best LXP in Asia. We probably have the best or engagement app, in Budaya. But it's still, the tech business is something, is you can have the best app, but if you don't have the most money to throw and market, you still lose, right? Because
yes.
somebody else is throwing money and making, spending $1 million on YouTube ads and a
Yeah.
whole bunch of other things, and you are like organically trying to grow. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But it wiped you, right? And you see the government change, you see it's like triple whammy, right? You see all the things you've built just thrown out the door. Government change, COVID wipes your business. You're like, oh goodness, what are you going to do, right? So you asked me, I was a pretty demotivated, in the early days. But then I realized, you know what? That's the hand you have been, that's the hand, right? That you've been dealt, right? What are you going to do, right? You got to just suck it up and figure it out, right? And that's what we did, right? And today we still, on a month-to-month basis, we figure out cash, right? I mean, on a month-to-month basis to today, I have to figure out how to pay my guys, right? We're much smaller today. We are probably about 50, 60 people now, compared to our 80, 90, a year ago. But it's still, but the good news is that we are now, probably got like about 8 people in Indonesia. We've got a couple of guys in Thailand. We've got, even got a person in Mexico today. We've got,
Wow.
I just made an offer yesterday to somebody in Brunei. So we are different, right? I mean, we've realized the Malaysian market may not be the best
Yes,
market.
yes. Yeah.
But
I mean, once you go digital, you're playing the world market
and
really,
and, the, and, the, and we can deliver all our programs virtually.
Yes.
We're completely virtual. And this time in June when they had the lockdown, it was like, okay, our corporate business, our transaction business, let's continue plugging along, and we're there. I mean, not again, it's never going to be pre-COVID, right? Where you had that crazy number of classrooms and all this,
Yeah.
with high margins baked in, a lot of it. Not going to be like that, but it's a new world, and we just have to
Yeah.
step
You
into
just
it.
have to adapt, I guess. No? Okay, maybe to finish off, Roshan, because you are in a people business and skills and talent is very important. How do you get talent? How do you attract talent, and how do you keep talent?
Talent is it's actually very, very tough, when you don't have money, right? So so one of the things, one interesting thing I did this year was, I reached out to like the real big superstars. So there's a guy called Paul Marca, who is the former provost of Stanford University. He retired last year. So when he retired, I said, Paul, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, oh, said, you're Stanford University, you built the executive education at Stanford, you should be part of Leaderonomics. I'm like, then I look at him, then he said, you want me to be part of Leaderonomics? Like, yeah, I can't pay you, but you can be part of Leaderonomics, it'll be good for you, right? And Paul was like, and after a while we said, okay, I give you shares, and we'll figure it out. I'm not going to give you cash, right? And so Paul joined our board, and Paul and I have been talking quite a bit. In fact, today he was talking to all our employees. We had an all-employee meeting with Paul there. And Paul, a couple of months ago, he challenged me. He said, look, you're getting talent in Malaysia and few here, these countries, but why can't you get the best talent from Stanford University and Harvard and Yale and all these big guys? Because last year they had this lockdown and all these other crazy things happen in the US, and many kids decided not to go into online university. They decided to take a gap year. Now when they're sitting at home, they realize they couldn't travel, so they're sitting watching Netflix and they're doing nothing. They're bored. Go find these guys and organize, like, create a global internship program and make them work for you for free, right? And that was in like end of May, right? Early June, I got my team together and said, look, we're launching the global internship program. Boom. And we got 30, 40 guys. We had about 400 applicants all over the world.
Wow.
We ended up picking 30 of them. And today I've got, like I said, I've got all these people from all this world working for us for free, but making a huge difference, right? Because they're thinking in a different way. So for me, part of it is you can attract talent and pay for it, but you always fall short. I give you an example. Always the PwCs and the EYs, these horrible people, right? They know that companies like us will always develop good talent, right? And they consistently, from 2012, 2013, they literally are like, they hire one of our guys and then they say, sit in there and understand who's coming in and make sure you steal from. So every couple of months I lose, after we spend 3, 4, 5 years developing a person, we lose them, right? And I realize that's going to happen. These guys have the money to say, I'll pay you 50%, 100% more, and they just because they're desperate, and they realize they are 50, 70%, the quality is so much better anyway than paying for much others, because we bring in really younger folks and develop them, right? And I think we've met some of our people, right? So I think but so then I said, look, maybe it's thinking about it in a different way, right? So maybe it's like, let me create a consistent team that I'm always bringing talent, regardless whether I need them or not. So I've created this BE squad, or what I call like a MI6, or like a Mission Impossible squad, right? So this one, they work for me, only work for me. Yeah, and I can hire anyone, right? So any really fresh grad, I'm like, no questions asked. I'm like, you come and work for me. Here's the job offer, bam, you come and work. And then they spend 3 to 6 months, and anytime we lose a person, right? I'm sure I can almost assure you in the next 2 months, probably EY or PwC will hire somebody from our team, right? So can almost guarantee, right? It's okay, never mind. So we will lose somebody, that's okay. Boom, we've got a ready-made replacement that's fully up and running with instructional design skills, with understanding of business strategy, with understanding of the how the organization works. And to me, I think you're always going to be, you can always say I'm a victim, and you say the big guys are going to bully us and so on, or you can say, look, it's going to happen, do something about it, right? And my approach is, let's just do something about it.
Okay. All right. Maybe just to tap you with one last question, no? We are really in very tough times now, especially if you're an SME and you don't have a big brand. What would be one or two pieces of advice you have for SME entrepreneurs, no? People who are facing this.
Yeah. So you ask yourself why you're a big brand, why you don't have a big brand, lah. I mean, if you think about me, again, we started with very little money, and a lot of people say, oh, you got this, you got that, but we what a waste for me. I give you an example. I mean, we were talking about this, Peter, before, right? BFM started about a couple of months after we started. So Leaderonomics started in early 2008, and BFM, probably mid September, I think they started. And when BFM started, they came to one of a conference, which I was speaking in, and they interviewed me, and they said, oh, it's very interesting, what you talked about. And I said, look, we're desperate for content. Would you like to come? It's like, sure, I'll do it for. Are you going to charge? I said, no, I'll do it for free. I'll come every week and spend an hour and do a show with you, right?
Wow.
And I was probably one of the earliest, first maybe show on BFM. That is consistent, and there was a couple of others, right? But I did a show for 10 years, right? I think with BFM, where every Monday I would spend an hour, doing a show. And about a couple of years ago, I started to give it away to my employees. I say, you do lah, enough for me. So I think, and today my employees still do the show, right? I think they run the BFM show. But that got, BFM was a big deal in 2008, 2009 when it first came out. A lot of people in Klang were really listening to it, but I again was one of the guys that were very early on. I remember when Tato Steven got to know me, in the Star. I mean, one of the things I started to do is I volunteered. I said, look, I can write an article if you want, and if it's good enough, you can publish it. And I started to write one, and they said, okay, you write once a month. I said, it's okay. I tell you what, I'll write once a week. I'll give it to you. If you want to publish it, you can publish it once a month. But feel free to publish whenever. So I sent in. Initially, it was started once every other week they will publish. Then they started to see I'm really consistent. Every week I send in, because the problem with writers is, at the start you will be very excited, but after a while you're not consistent. But every week I'll submit an article, on Thursday, before the Saturday. And before long, I was writing for Star consistently. So on a Saturday, I was in Starbiz, with a column. Not because I was really good at it. Initially, I wasn't that good, but I kept doing it and doing it. And so when, and this happened in 2007, right? 2008, way before Leaderonomics started, right? So when we started it, I had a bit of a brand, right? And I think the same with SMEs, right? When you say you got no money, right? There are things you can do. Today I'm doing a daily LinkedIn show, right? And why is crazy fella doing LinkedIn every day? I'm like, it's okay. But the reality is I'm meeting so many people today. I met Rob Pine, right? An Australian writer, great, such a great, thoughtful, insightful leader. And next week, it's Anthony Trucks, who's another famous athlete in the US. Every week I meet different people. Last week, Dato Nora was on our Rethinking Business sheet, which is a very technical show, back on my finance background, right? I do a very technical show of deconstructing the balance sheet for SMEs. So we look at the balance sheet and rethink it, right? Because we need cash, we need assets, but we are full of liabilities. So how do we manage the balance sheet in a very clever way? So I run a separate show with a very technical person, Ravi, who's from Dana Harta before. So the two of us run this technical show. But I also run a leadership show. We also run a HR show where we look at psychology. But to me, those are, you don't have to pay for any of that, right? But those are all free, right? So, I mean, I think you can say that I don't have money, I don't have things, but there are still opportunities for you to build a brand.
Yes.
And I think that's important in this time and age.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to finish off, Roshan. So take advantage of all the means available, all the platforms that are available now, which are free, whether LinkedIn is your cup of tea or Facebook Live or whatever it is. And, just put out your brand and add value, add value wherever you can to your customers, to your non-customers, to whoever, and eventually you will get noticed. And that's where the power of the brand will come in. So think long term, and like Roshan said, all this is free. Yeah, so you're adding value, not expecting anything in return. But like what he has shown, he attracted Kazana, he attracted Proton, he attracted all these post Malaysia and all these guys just by starting out first. So with that note, Roshan, I'd like to thank you for your time and for your good input into this program. All the best, and we'll meet again.
Yep.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Peter. All the best. Have a good
Okay.
one, guys. Take care.
All right.